Hi, welcome back to my channel. I thought that since I did not do a recent reads this week, and I really haven't done a whip and chat, I thought I would do a whip and chat in my recent reads, at least for 1 week. I can't do the whole thing because it's well over 20 books. So let's get started. We're going to start with the book named Frizzy. Now, Frizzy is about a young girl she's a Latino girl with naturally curly hair, but every Sunday her mother takes her to the beautician to get her hair done. And when she goes to get her hair done, she's there for hours. It gets washed, conditioned, blow-dried, straightened, and then set. And Frizzy, the little girl has to keep her hair up until it is as close to the next appointment as possible. If she doesn't keep her hair up, then her mom will put it into pigtails. And this is really disconcerting to the little girl because she feels that her pigtails make her look like an alien because her ears stick out. So we find out how she learns to embrace her naturally curly hair and to allow her mom to allow her to maintain that style. So that was Frizzy. Really, really good book by Claribel Ortega. I loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I did. It was just an excellent read. Now, the next book I read was The Other Side of Certain. So with The Other Side of Certain, it is book number 1 in the Love for Certain series. It is a historical romance, but set in a very, very sweet manner. I loved this book because with this book we have Maddie Mobley and Daniel Barrett, but Daniel's nickname was called the Grizzly Bear. Now, Amy goes to the town, starting off as a town librarian, but with hopes to turn that town into a forward-moving town to the extent that she can become the town's teacher. So she starts off by delivering books like on a route to different young readers, all while working towards trying to set up a location for a school. One of the families that she delivers to, Daniel, he has, I believe, 3 or 4 children, and she connects with all of her recipients of books, but she really connects with Daniel's children. More than that, they start to connect with one another. So it was just a very, very sweet story. I loved it. I have not yet written the book review. I'll probably do that the next day or so and make a video on it. But that was The Other Side of Certain. Then I read Only Child by Casey Kelleher. And this was a really good book. I'm going to bring it up on Goodreads because it's been 2 weeks maybe. Now, in this particular book, we have a 15-year-old girl named Kayla who disappears one day. Now, what led to her disappearance? First, when you start the book, you discover that her mother is super protective. And what they do, what her mother specifically, not so much her father, but her mother Sherry does, is to thwart any attempts on this little girl growing up, and now she's 15 years of age. Well, she's about to go on a school trip with some friends of hers, I think to France, and lo and behold, they cannot find her passport. So her trip gets ruined. She doesn't get to go. So her mother mollifies her by saying, okay, you know that party you wanted to go to, you can go to it, and actually I'm going to give you an open budget to buy whatever dress you want to buy for that party. So her little girl, her 15-year-old daughter, buys this dress. This dress makes her look very grown up. She goes to the party. She never returns home. So it's a psychological thriller because it has secrets. And these secrets are what comes out in this book as you read it. And I loved it. I think I went 4 stars. Did I go 4 or 5? Let's see what I did. No, I went 5 stars with that one. I really, really liked it. It was very, very, very good. Then the next book I read was The Midnight Children, and this was my second. I didn't mention earlier that trying to bring it up. I didn't mention earlier that Frizzy was a children's book, and so is The Midnight Children. Now, this is about a little boy who one day sees a car pull up and he sees 7 children tumbling out, each with a suitcase. And he's really curious about who these children are. And they were children who escaped a bad situation, and now they're in his town. And it's a little bit of a mystery trying to figure out who these children are, where they came from, and where they're going to end up. But what was cute about the story is it was a story about friendship, acceptance, and home and family. And it was a very, very good book. It was by Dan Gemeinhart. I don't read much children's fiction, but that's changing. I'm hoping to get like at least 2 or 3 read every single month. And I really, really liked it. I don't know why I'm pausing because I definitely loved this book. And it was a great read, and I think kids would like this book. There's a little bit of scariness in it because of where the kids were trying to be, where somebody was trying to take the kids, but not to the point where it would terrify or give nightmares. Just a little. So in our next book, A Different Kind of Normal, and some of these books have long titles, and the long title for this one is A Different Kind of Normal, My Real Life, Completely True Story About Being Unique. This is sort of a memoir because it is an illustrated children's book by an author named Abigail Balfe. I think it's E is a long syllable, but Abigail Balfe, who grew up autistic but didn't fully know she was autistic until later in life. And how the world, I'm just going to tell you about this book before I go back to my painting. How the world changed for her as her diagnosis became clear, and some of the challenges that she faced. And what's good about this book is if you ever feel different about your life, or you ever feel that your life was different than anyone else's, especially as this book is directed towards children, since I'm trying to read some children's fiction, this is a really, really good book. And Abigail Balfe is an illustrator as well, so this whole entire book is illustrated. So I just wanted to throw that in because actually I left this book review out and I'm just putting it in the right spot. Alrighty. Full excitement, and it was a very good book. Then the next book I read was To Be a Mother, and this was by Emma Robinson, and this was a women's fiction. And when Emma Robinson writes her books, they are always heart tuggers. Always. You cannot, at least I have not been able to read an Emma Robinson book without a box of tissues nearby. Okay? That's how she writes her books. So in this particular book, our protagonist wants one thing and one thing only. She wants to be a mother. And now she's married to a man named David, and she's like, hey, I really, they talk about it. They plan on having a family, but the thing is, they don't get pregnant. So they have adoption as an option, but she doesn't want to do adoption. Okay? Her name is Hannah. What she wants to do is try IVF. So the IVF specialist tells her one day, look, your eggs aren't viable. This is very, very unlikely to work. Well, David tells her, well, my first wife, we couldn't get pregnant either, and guess what? We have some embryos. How about we use those embryos? So it becomes kind of like a moral dilemma because of how much Hannah wants to be a mother. And that's why the book is called To Be a Mother, because that's what she wants more than anything. And so it's a wee bit of a little bit of a suspense, because there's a little bit about, I won't really say suspense, but when you read this book, there's a secret in it. And as the secret starts to unfold, we see how it impacts Hannah's decision to if she's going to use David's first wife's eggs. Very, very good. Just a really good emotional women's fiction book. I really loved it. And then the next book I read was On the Rooftop by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, and this was a surprise to me. I have never heard of this author, but I get audiobook codes a couple of times a month. I get maybe 20 or even 30, and then I choose of those that I want to listen to. Well, I found a Facebook Live with Jasmine Guillory and Margaret Sexton. Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, and I watched it, and I had never heard of the author, so I'm like, why does her name look familiar? And I discovered her name looked familiar because I had seen it in the audiobook offerings for that particular publisher. So I rushed over, grabbed the book, and I listened to it. It's about a trio of sisters who make up a singing group, and they are very successful in their little time, and I think it was the 60s or 70s, but they started to branch out and want different things in life. And it was just the tale of these three women, and it especially focused on one of the sisters and how they chose their lives and the dramas and the connections and all of that. It was very, very, very strong book. Excellent. No, I have not yet written this book review. I'm always behind writing book reviews. Oh my goodness, this one here, Hidden Scars. Oh, pardon me, I hope you did not hear that. Hidden Scars by Angela Marsons. I think it's yes, it is number 17 in the D.I. Kim Stone series. And let me tell you, I have read last year, maybe I'd say 6 months ago or so, I binge read all 16 books, the first 16 books in like 3 days. Boom, boom, boom. I went through 16, 300, 400 page books. That's how good the series was. So with this particular book, we have Kim coming back to work after a mandatory 2-month break because of what happened at the end of book 16. And the guy who was taking her place when Kim comes into the office or to the police station, she sees a murder board and the victim's name, but all she pretty much saw was the victim's name. It was a young boy named Jamie, and she wants to know why wasn't Jamie's death or murder or what cause of his death being investigated. So she dives into that, and as she dives into that, she learns so much more about herself, about these young people that are involved in whatever's going on, and just excellent fodder if you really like good police procedural novels. Now, one thing is with this book is every time Angela Marsons presents Kim Stone with a case, she writes a different story, a different case, a different scenario, and she never strikes out. It's always something good. And that's all I can say about that one. I think I made a video, and if I did, it's going to come up when the book is out. And if not, I will make the video soon. Then I read a very early, not very, very early, but somewhat early, yeah, a couple of months early, Behind Closed Doors by Carol Wyer. Now, this is a standalone. Now, Carol Wyer writes series, and I do have one of her series books coming up in the next couple of months that's coming out next year, but this was a standalone. And we have Stacy in this particular book, and she never forgot how being kidnapped over 30 years previously changed her life. And then when she finds out that her former stepdaughter Lyra had been kidnapped, she feels that her former stepdaughter's kidnapping had to do with her kidnapping. So she wants to find out what in the world happened to her former stepdaughter. And by the way, I say former stepdaughter because she was married to Lila's father, but he was controlling, demanding, and pretty much an awful husband. But during the time she was married to him, she grew very, very close to her stepdaughter. So she is fully invested in finding Lyra and finding out how and in what way it connected to her past and why she's so determined to prove that it was connected to her past. So that was really good. Then I read, let's see, Her Frozen Heart by Stacy Green. And I'm going to look it up because I want to see what number in the series it is. I think it's 6. Let's see if I'm right. Yep, it is. It's book number 6 in the Nikki Hunt series. Now, Nikki Hunt is an FBI agent. Most of the time when I read crime fiction, I'm reading of detective inspectors or chief inspectors or detective sergeants. But in the Nikki Hunt series, she's an FBI agent. And this is the series that I think readers would love if they read it from the beginning and read it through. Because when you do, you get to know Nikki and some of the things from her past and how they affect what she's up to now with the different cases. Really, really good, solid reading. And I'm just going to turn the brightness up on here because it's so bright outside that it's making it hard to see. In this particular book, when she sees the body of the victim in her next case, 17-year-old teenager Keisha Williams, this brings back memories to something about Nikki's past. Now, it's about to be Christmas, and now Christmas is all but ruined because Keisha's case takes precedence. Now, there's a little bit of social awareness in this book because Keisha's family is determined that Keisha's case gets the notoriety and the attention it deserves, and they feel, especially Keisha's mother feels that the police might bury it because Keisha was black. And Nikki wants her mother to be assured that her case will not be ignored or not handled properly because of race. And so that is what Her Frozen Heart was. I loved it. It was a really, really good book. Now, I'm trying to decide, let me see how long this video is, and then we'll decide if I'm going to go on. Okay, I just checked the time. I think I'm going to go ahead and bring you up to the series that I am reading. And then I will end the video. And then maybe that way, on my next WIP and Chat, I can talk to you about the series. So, the next one I read was The Belle of Belgrave Square by Mimi Matthews. And I think, sometimes I forget sometimes I forget, I just closed my browser. Sometimes I forget where books are in the series, so let's bring this up. I made a typo, so it didn't come up. Give me one moment, and then I'll pick up my drill. Why can't I bring this up? I'm using my other tablet for this, and sometimes I struggle with this. Okay, there we go. Okay, it's the second book in the Bells of London series. I really wanted to know where it stood in the series because it's really a good series. I love it, and I love Mimi Matthews. I don't know how many books I have read by her so far, but let me tell you, whatever I read by her is always good. I've never once been disappointed. And in this one here, we have a London heiress. I'm done with the letter L, by the way. We have a London heiress who... Oh, did I tell you? I am working on the cat, and I will try to put this at the beginning of the video. This is The Cat by Diamond Art Club. I don't think I said that. But anyway, in this book, we have an heiress, and her name is Julia, and she needs to marry because that's what you do, you know, in those days. You have your season, and you go on the marriage mart, and you find your mate. And then we also have Captain Jasper Blunt, who needs to marry. I gotta see what my next symbol is. We'll go with the letter C. Captain Jasper Blunt, who needs to marry a wealthy heiress. And basically, I cannot find the letter C. You know, I don't keep my drills in order. I keep them in color order, but I never did that. Okay. So, Jasper and Julia come up with a plan, and they will marry, and it accomplishes a goal because Julia has two things that she loves: horseback riding and reading. And those are just not the thing for ladies of the ton. So if she marries Jasper, he has to agree to allow her to read to her heart's content and to ride her precious horse to her heart's content. Meanwhile, her parents are sickly and controlling, and that's why they end up making this agreement to marry. It will help Jasper, but it's not a love match. Will it become a love match? Well, it's a historical romance, so maybe it will. And that is The Belle of Belgrave Square. Really, really good, solid reading by Mimi Matthews. I think I probably have read 7 books by her, if I'm not mistaken. She is so good. I love her stuff. Then this one here that I want to talk to you about really briefly is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Now, I need to get this book review written and get this baby posted because I think the book came out like 2 days ago or 3 days ago. Now, this is a book about a boy named Bird Gardner. And around the age of 12, he's taking piano. I think, is he taking piano lessons? Well, in other words, whether he's not, because I don't want to mix him up with, I think I just almost mixed him up with a book from Ian McEwan. That little boy is the one that takes piano lessons. Sorry, sometimes I mix books up. Anyway, Bird Gardner wants to find his mother, and that's pretty much the journey. He's being raised by his father. His father is a single parent, and Bird wants to find his mother. And this book is true to me, in my opinion, because I don't read much of literary fiction, but I would call this book literary fiction. She writes so poetically, so compellingly, that you truly get lost in little Bird's story, and as he becomes a little bit older while he is looking for his mother. And then we find out what happened and why he was searching for her in the first place. I mean, just pure genius. And believe it or not, the first time I've read a book by Celeste Ng. And let me tell you, in a couple of the groups I'm in, this book is highly wanted. And I had to read it because I'm like, what am I missing? And that is this book, Our Missing Hearts. Then the next book is Where We End and Begin by Jane Igharo. Now, she's Nigerian, so her characters are also Nigerian. But one of our principal character, Dunny, has been living in America the past 12 years, but she grew up in Nigeria. When they were 17, her and a man that we'll meet in the book named Obini made a blood oath. They tied themselves together for all time. Even though they knew she was going to go away to America for college, some way, somehow they were going to be together. Well, despite falling in love, despite that blood oath, she does go to America, becomes a research geneticist, and never returns. Well, a friend of hers is getting married in Nigeria, so now it's, like I said, 12 years later, and she returns to go to her friend's wedding. Well, when she sees Abina, the connection they had as teens is just as strong. The awareness, the connection, it's just as strong as it was from the get-go. But the thing is, her life is in America and his life is in Nigeria, but more than that, she's now engaged. I think the man she's engaged to is named Christopher. And even though everything in Obina, everything in Dunny pulls them to each other, her responsibilities as a geneticist in America, her engagement, her life in America, and his life in Nigeria makes it utterly impossible that they could be together. Yet this is a powerful, powerful romance about two people who are in love, who are destined to be together, and will climb every mountain in order to do so. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Then I read Station Eternity by Rafferty. Now this was a kind of a hard read for me because it's science fiction and I'm not really a science fiction reader. I don't read it. I'm trying to get into it. And so this book, as it starts out, you have, okay, so it didn't want to come up. You have our girl, and I'm trying to think of her name. That's why I'm trying to bring it up. It's the Midsolar Murders #1, and I am going to continue the series. But her name is Mallory Viridian. And in the blurb, she's described as a futuristic Jessica Fletcher. Now, she's a young woman. She's not Jessica Fletcher's age. But basically, where Mallory exists, death is to follow. And everything about her life on planet Earth has led to a murder or a death. So when she gets the opportunity to live on a space station with aliens and no humans, she can finally get away from death. But there was one other piece to the puzzle with Mallory. Not only was she always around death, but she had the innate ability to either solve the crimes or lead the police to making the crimes get solved. And now, all of a sudden, the powers that be create shuttles that will not only allow humans to visit the space station, but even some to choose to live there. And that's where the story takes a turn, because Mallory knows, oh my goodness, if there are going to be humans, there's going to be death. So it becomes a murder mystery. And once I got into it, once I got into the action of it, oh my goodness, I could not put it down. It was really, really good. Because when I was reading it for about maybe 40 or 50% of the book, I felt like I was going to give it, maybe 3 stars. But I'll go, I think I wrote the review for a solid 4 stars. Because it really caught me. I was really pleasantly surprised, and I'm like I said, when the next book comes out, I will request it and continue the series. And one last time, it's the Midsolar Murders #1. So then the next book I read was Miss Del Rio, which the long title is Miss Del Rio, a novel of Dolores Del Rio, the first major Latina star in Hollywood, by Barbara Mujica. Now, I know that's a long title, but it was a well-worthy read about Dolores Del Rio, who came from a very good background, but in a country where revolution had changed the course of the country's revolution had changed the course of her life. So at the age of 16, she marries a wealthy American, and one time at a party, an American director notices her and finds her strikingly beautiful, and she's catapulted into the world of Hollywood. And she becomes, as the long title says, the first Latino movie star. And when I say the first Latino movie star, we're talking very early 1900s, because they were silent films and then slowly speaking films. And most of the time she received top billing, and then sometimes she had to share the billing. But then the world started to change as the wars started, and then there started to be some racial tension, and she ended up back in Mexico, and her career got a second start. But this story goes until she's much older, and we see how her life changed even more after she went back to Mexico. Excellent, excellent book. I absolutely, absolutely loved it. Then this book here, The Dangerous One by Laurie Foster. I read this book to proofread it. I haven't read it for review yet, and there's no cover on it, so I can't show you a cover because it does come out until February. But let me tell you, I won't tell you much about the book other than to say this. One of the best romances I have read in a long time. That's all I'm going to tell you. You'll just have to wait for the book to come out, or at least get closer to publication so I can fully talk about it. Then I read That Summer in Berlin by Lecia Cornwall. And let me tell you, this book was really good because it never ceases to surprise me how many historical fiction books I read that change my perspective of what was going on during World War II. Now, it was just prior to World War II when the world was changing, and the view of anyone that wasn't German was really becoming known by Hitler and his future plans that were starting to come true. Well, it was also time for the Berlin Summer Olympics, so then Germany had to act as if everything was peachy keen and fine for the sake of the opening games. Well, it was much, much deeper than that, and as things went on, we meet a couple who were not they were not a couple, but we meet two people. She was a photographer and he was a journalist, and they became spies during this tentative time in history during the Berlin Olympics. Excellent, excellent 5-star read. That's all I'm going to say about that. Then I read The Second Wife by L.J. Moss, and goodness gracious, this book has me so torn because it was not a book I wanted to finish. It was a book that I wanted to just, if I had a physical copy of the book, I would have probably thrown it against the wall. But I was requested to read this book, and so therefore I finished it. So I haven't fully decided on the rating. I was going to not review it at all. Then I was thinking of 2, but then someone helped me to realize that there are other things I can look at about the book itself beyond the story that I did not like. So I might be able to get it up to a 3, but we'll have to wait and see when I write the review. I don't know if I can do it. I just don't know if I can do it. And then we have My Husband's Lover by Jess Ryder. Now, with this particular book, there are a group of women who swim in the icy waters, or should I say they swim year-round, and it happens to be where the fall or winter when the waters are very icy. And they have become a nice little team of swimmers that meet together every Tuesday, and when they meet, they enjoy their swimming. Well, one day after, when they're having like their hot toddy or their hot chocolate or whatever hot drink they're having to warm up, they hatch a plan to go on an escape for 1 week and do all the swimming they can do for that week. So they research and they find a place in Scotland, a bare bones, remote area, no internet, no electricity, no indoor plumbing, and these women are going to go on this little trip. The thing is, one of the women when her husband sees a picture of her and her friends, he tells her, you can't go. I don't want you to go. There's, whatever. Well, we do find out that she knew her husband had cheated on her. In fact, they talk about how they went into counseling. Well, she learns that one of the women in that group, in that photo that her husband saw, is his wife's lover. Her husband's lover. And the intent in this book is I dropped a drill, but I don't know. Oh, there it is. Somebody in this, I think 5 women went on this vacation, and only 4 might come back. Somebody has ulterior motives. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the last book that I want to tell you about, because the next group of books I'm reading are 13 books in the Jen McKinley series, and I'm currently on book 7, so I'll talk about those in a separate video. So we're going to wrap it up. I didn't get a lot done on my painting, but hey, it is what it is. But thank you for listening, and I will edit in the book covers to this video, and hopefully you'll enjoy listening to it. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.